There is a war on for your mind. Eden-stained crimson with blood-soaked sand. Hatred runs rampant throughout the Holy Land. Amputated limbs of weeping children. Bomb fell short and missed the villain. There is a war on for your mind. Prozac dreams are FDA approved. Machine gun fire and an altered mood. MK Ultra mind control. War is on for your mind, your body, your soul. There is a war on for your mind. A market in decline and a weakened dollar. Can't afford the groceries and the milk's gone sour. Defaulted on my mortgage, can't pay the bank. Can't feed my family, can't put gas in the tank. Hyperinflation is on exponential rise. Educational system in severe decline. Son home from school didn't make the grade. Laid off this week and didn't get paid. Credit default swaps and option arms. America in distress, sound the alarm. But apathy sets in. Mass media managed. Wins deal or no deal on. We must be brain damaged. There is a war on for your mind. International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization. Central banking systems control every nation. Truth is, you see, money equals debt. We'd fix third world hunger, but they've not paid us back yet. We loaned them cash at interest rates unreasonable. Sent in the economic hitmen to make them more agreeable. What's this, my friends? You can't settle your debt? That's all right. We can work this out yet. Simply adjust your budget and tighten your belt. We'll plunder your resources, consume all your wealth. We start with your oil. We need cheap energy. Make room for Exxon, Shell, and BP. Forsake your own people, your very homeland. Cut spending on healthcare and social programs. If you refuse, your nation we lay waste. Laser-guided munitions delivered with haste. Caspian pipelines will export your black gold. You don't ask questions. You do as you're told. Wake up, America. Abandon assumption. We no longer produce, we've turned to consumption. We have grown decadent. It's gone to our head. It's time that we act. Time we ended the Fed.
End the Fed. End the Fed. End the Fed.
They print their fake money, so hey, what's the difference? Your income tax doesn't even cover the interest. Now we can see a new world coming into view. A system of control that is run by the few. This war on terror, it's just an illusion. Order out of chaos. Problem, reaction, solution. Operation Northwoods staged war pretext. Investigate 9/11. We'll never forget. There is a war on for your mind. It ain't getting easier. Politicians are greedy and getting much sleazier. The left-right paradigm, it's testing my patience. Republicans in the Council on Foreign Relations. Bilderberg Group, Trilateral Commission, roundtable groups demanding submission. Bush, Kerry, Cheney, Obama, they're all blood-related. Enough with the drama. Kissinger calls for population reduction. Iraqi children fit for human consumption. Albright and Clinton supporting UN trade sanctions. Sanctimonious nihilism corrupting all nations. The New World Order shed blood as they toil. As the people of conscience shout, no blood for oil. It is time to wake up. The Republic is under attack. Your freedom is gone thanks to the Patriot Act. John Warner Defense Authorization laying siege on the Prozac Nation. Executive orders PD51. Consolidation of power enforced by the gun. Rex 85. FEMA internment camps. martial law on the horizon without your consent. Surrender your weapons, your soul, your rights. Don't resist us. Don't put up a fight. You are to be servile, obedient, controlled. The New World Order is to be extolled. And when you look back at what you have lost, would you not bear any burden and pay any cost? To retain what is God-given and fight for the cause. It is true what they say. Not all is yet lost. So take heart, my good friends, and drink from the cup. Freedom will ring as the people wake up. Once more, my good friends, keep your nose to the grind. Cherish liberty always, because there's a war on for your mind. We are fearless, we are patriots, we are change. Thank you.
Welcome to the first episode of Minnesota Change. Minnesota Change is a We Are C.H.A.N.G.E group. We've been around for 2+ years now. This is our first episode of the Minnesota Change channel. We Are C.H.A.N.G.E is an organization that was started by Luke Rodowski. He hails from New York, and after 9/11, he felt compelled to quote unquote become the media because he didn't feel they were given an accurate representation of what happened on 9/11, and he started an organization thus called We Are Change. Change actually is an acronym. It means Coalition for Halting the Agenda of the Nefarious Global Elite. It's kind of long-winded, but basically he and like other members of We Are Change thus want to become the media that they're not represented by. My name is Terrence Brown. I was inspired to join the group We Are Change and actually join the local chapter, Minnesota Change. Actually, a couple of years ago, a good friend of mine, who's a member of We Are Change, came back from a trip, showed me some videos, and it kind of got me thinking about 9/11 and everything that happened after that, as far as like things like the Patriot Act, Homeland Security, all these things, all hail from the event of 9/11, and basically we want to see the change. We want to be the change that we want to see in the world, and to do that, we became the media in a sense. But I'm here with a few other members of We Are Change. The first member going to be here is a good friend of mine. I've known him for almost 2 years now. Anthony, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Terrence. I'm Anthony Asher. I'm one of the co-founders of the original Minnesota We Are Change, and been kind of active, and I used to shy away from the news, and after 9/11 I kind of took that my country was under attack and that I needed to do something, but felt that we were being led astray somehow, and kind of wisened up to what was going on, and ended up doing a lot of research on my own over many years, and just didn't really seem like there was too many other people out there, and came across the We Are Change video, one of the early ones from New York, and it inspired me to get my butt out and stop sitting behind a computer screen, and we've been doing it ever since, and just not taking any crap from these guys. And there's a lot of people that are out there that are suffering right now and it happened well before 9/11, but everybody that died on there, everybody that's still dying from 9/11, all the lives that have been lost in all the wars, both sides, civilians, and there needs to be some accountability, and I think we can definitely hold these people accountable.
All right. Yes, and sitting to the left of me is a new member, or probably one of our newest members, Jamie. You want to introduce yourself and say a few things?
I was impacted by 9/11 because I have a lot of relatives on the East Coast, and it really got me thinking when 9/11 happened of how that day transpired, and how just little anomalies about that day made me really ask questions, and really felt that the media wasn't addressing some of those questions. And if they did address them, it would be a little story in back page of the paper, a little, paragraph or something like that, regarding the story. I just felt like my questions weren't answered, and I also, like Anthony, got sick of watching some of the ludicrous stories that we were being told, and how there was no accountability for anyone to say, hey, you guys told us this thing on this particular date about this particular situation, and it turned out to be something totally false. So I ended up getting up, and I heard that former Governor Jesse Ventura was going to be at a book signing, and I decided that it was going to have to be my turn to go ahead and start asking some serious questions, and I wanted to see how he felt about that, and that's how I ran into these gentlemen, and these guys are my second family as far as what we do. I don't know what else to add to that. I guess it's just I had a lot of questions, and I'm thankful that I bumped into an organization that cares enough to go ahead and ask some of the same questions that were on my mind also. So.
All right. And sitting to the right of me is a good friend Brian here. I've known him just as long as I've known Anthony, and I'm sure he has something to say about why you joined the organization.
Thanks, Terrence. My name is Brian Peterson, co-founder of Minnesota We Are C.H.A.N.G.E. Started about 2 years ago, as Anthony said. Just started off concerned citizens wanting to make a difference, wanting to ask the tough questions the media would not ask. I woke up about 2005, saw martial law rise to the police state, and that really opened my eyes to what's going on in the world. I always had a feeling there's a lot messed up with the world that we live in, and 9/11, I guess, really magnified that, and delving into that, researching, you really see the loss of our freedoms and the direction where this country's headed, and it's very disturbing, and we just want to try to make a difference if we can.
All right. We introed our first video we showed was a clip from the In the Fed rally that happened, a few weeks ago? We had a few hundred people come out, and we just basically showed our support by recording everything that happened. We actually, even though you just saw one clip, there's other clips of what happened at the In the Fed rally. And you meet a lot of like-minded people when you go to events like this. I can honestly say that I'm a freedom-loving person, and everybody on the stage kind of feels the same way. And so to go out and meet a bunch of people that feel that same way, I don't know, it's easy to develop a rapport with those people. And people like Rand Paul came out and spoke. There were other speakers who came out and just talked about their feelings with the Federal Reserve. The great thing about this organization is it's all-encompassing. So there are people that you'll meet that are Republican, Democrat, Independent. We meet a lot of people that are what they call it. It's not quote unquote patriots, and people that are libertarians. They believe in the libertarian movement. I guess my slant would come down closer to the libertarian. And if you look at the Republican base, if they followed their base, I'd probably be a hardcore Republican, but they don't. The In the Fed rally was our last really big event. We went to the fishing opener last weekend, and that was an interesting experience. Probably talk about that more later. We're going to be watching a clip of World Trade Center 7. This is the third building that collapsed on 9/11. They say 9 out of 10 people in the States haven't, after 9/11 didn't see this clip. It was the last building that collapsed on 9/11, close to 5 o'clock. A couple of interesting things about this is that the building in question was never hit by anything, and it collapsed at free fall speed. And there are a couple news organizations, including BBC, that reported its collapse. 20 minutes before it actually happened. The one thing they haven't really been able to explain, especially BBC, is how this building collapsed and why they got the information 20 minutes ahead of time. So yeah, we're going to be watching a clip.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Gone, man. Okay, we just watched the clip of World Trade Center 7. A couple, like I said before, there's a few things about that collapse that are suspicious. The penthouse goes before any other parts of the building, and if you see the building, you see the building in the video. There are floors that are on fire, and this is in the first firefighters, the reports that firefighters gave, and the. There's only fires on I believe 4 or 5 floors, if not mistaken, and even firefighters at the scene said that they could knock it down. It was no big deal for them to knock down these fires. Not to say that they weren't that devastating, because they would damage those floors a lot, but they wouldn't have the ability to collapse it. The building itself comes down within a few seconds, and yeah, that's to me is the smoking gun of 9/11. If any of you guys everybody I know that's seen that clip kind of has to question the official story from that point on out, because other than a controlled demolition, it's almost impossible for a collapse like that to happen. It just is. So yeah, I guess that's what we're going to be talking about right now. So
it definitely looks like a controlled demolition. You see the classic crimp towards the center of the building, pulling the rest of the building in on itself, coming down at free fall speed. They left it out of the 9/11 Commission report. They could not explain why the building came down. And you got Larry Silverstein, the owner of the Trade Center complex, which stated that they decided to pull the building. And you just got to put it all together. And
yeah, there was that in that documentary that he was in when they were talking about. There was a PBS documentary where they discussed 9/11, and actually it was what they call a kind of a whitewash, because they use a computer simulated model that if you look at the model, it looks nothing like the building collapsing. And there's a quote from Larry Silverstein in that documentary saying that that they ordered the building to be pulled, so we pulled it. And if you call up your local people who are in demolitions, they'll tell you pull is a classic term for demolishing the building.
And some people argue, when I bring that up, some people argue, well, yeah, they pulled the building. And I say, okay, well, doesn't it take a couple of weeks, if not months, to actually wire a building with explosives?
Yeah.
And people will admit, you show them the clip, and they'll admit that, oh, okay, it's a controlled demolition. Well, yeah, it takes.
Hence the numerous reports of bomb-sniffing dogs being pulled from the locations a week in advance or the weekend before. Multiple reports on that. Also, I mean, for the people locally here in Minneapolis, they need to understand that Building 7 was a 47-story skyscraper. And to put that into perspective, the IDS building downtown is 52 stories. And, well, Building 7 collapsed in 6 seconds. So can you imagine that? I mean, just think about that for a moment. Stories coming down, 47 of them in 6 seconds or less. I mean, I don't get the time correct, or but it's in seconds. It's the magnitude of that. I mean, you got to also put into perspective that the World Trade Center 7 was 3 to 4 times as wide as the IDS building. So,
plus it was the home of the FBI, the Treasury.
Secret Service,
the Secret Service, the CIA,
Giuliani's
the NSA. As a matter of fact, the records for Ken Lay's Kenley's trial were in that building, and that was one of the reasons why it was delayed so long.
At the Enron?
Enron.
The Enron documents, all the scandals. Wall Street were there, and now they're destroyed.
Yes.
It's kind of like Jeff said. I mean, you got to think about the importance of Building 7. And when I say 7 building, there were 7 buildings in the complex, and parts of the World Trade Center did collapse onto World Trade Center 7. But you can look at, and with the movie editing, we can probably show you the clips or pictures of all the other World Trade Center buildings, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that all received
Massive
more damage than World Trade Center 7 did, and none of them collapsed, and they were smaller, less reinforced buildings.
At the foot of the main
And they
collapse.
were 7 was the farthest building away from the
Yeah,
complex,
that's
and it
a
was
really
across
good
the
point.
street, and it collapsed with barely damaging the building. I mean, they were.
Right into
It's
the
New York
footprint.
City. They had it cramped in there, basically, building to building, and there's some skid marks on the walls and stuff. But besides that, you'd think that something's going to fall. Like,
Yeah, that's a
it's going
very
to do a
good
little more
point.
damage.
There was more damage caused to nearby buildings around the World Trade Center 1 and 2. Like he said, there's 7 World Trade Center buildings. They're all, for the most part, in the same given area. 7 is the farthest from the other buildings, though. World Trade Center 1 and 2 are kind of like in 2 corners of a lot, and then there's World Trade Center buildings 3, 4, and then there's like 2 more behind those. Those received a good amount of damage, but nothing collapsed. And they were way closer to World Trade Center 1 and 2 that actually, you know, if you believe the official story, they collapsed because the plane hit it and then it collapsed at free fall speed. But yeah, those buildings took a lot of damage, but they were still standing at the end of the day. And World Trade Center 7 collapsed with, you know, with some damage, but not nearly as much as what happened to the other buildings. So I think basically there were 4 acts of terrorism, I believe. And
4 separate acts.
4 separate, yeah. And he collected money on, was it 4 separate acts of terrorism?
I think so.
Yes. So he collected multiple times more the money.
About $7 billion,
yeah.
I believe it was.
Yeah, $7 billion. He collected double insurance basically off of all these buildings because they were insured. They were insured for acts of terrorism, and since 2 planes hit the buildings, he got double. So, you know.
Let's not forget that Larry Silverstein is not necessarily directly involved, like the bad guy, but he is involved with this Madoff scandal too. So.
Some people appear to have known the imminent future on that fateful day. FEMA had arrived in New York on Monday night, ready for a bioterror drill. Spokesman Tom Kenny to Dan Rather.
To be honest with you, we arrived on late Monday night and went into action on Tuesday morning. And not until today did we get a full opportunity to work the entire site other than the spot at Church and Day to which we were deployed.
And Rudy Giuliani, mayor of New York, tells ABC's Peter Jennings that he was aware the towers would be coming down.
What is going on now is a massive rescue effort.
And do you believe it's hundreds or thousands?
I really don't want to say right now, Peter. I think it's going to be a horrible number. I saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. I saw some of the firefighters who I know going into the building. And we were in a building in which we were trapped for about 10, 15 minutes. And we set up headquarters at 75 Barclay Street, which was right there with the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management. And we were operating out of there when we were told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. The World Trade Center was going to collapse. It was going to collapse. It was going to collapse.
Similarly, Larry Silverstein, new leaseholder of the World Trade Center, regretfully declared that a decision was made to pull Building 7 by the end of the day, the last structure added to the World Trade Center complex. Let's hear Mr. Silverstein's actual words, delivered for our benefit in the 2002 PBS documentary America Rebuilds.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Blast, shoot, blow, and pull are terms used in the demolition industry to refer to bringing down buildings, bridges, and other structures.
Because I actually blew the hospital down that I was born in.
Originally, we had figured to shoot it and let it drop straight down.
Then, watch Demolition Dynamics attempt a big blast.
And from Ground Zero's own post-disaster wrecking crew.
By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull building 6.
Silverstein, a commercial real estate tycoon with international political connections, acquired a 99-year lease on the World Trade Center complex in the spring of 2001. Throughout the summer, he reworked the insurance policies on his new property, making sure that it was covered for acts of terrorism. Explicit in the lease agreement was Silverstein's right to rebuild the complex if it were destroyed. After 9/11, Mr. Silverstein fought his insurers in court to obtain double his policy limits for the destruction of his property, maintaining that the double hijacking constituted 2 disasters caused by terrorists, not just one. He won and was awarded over $7 billion, a magnificent return on his original $15 million investment.
My first reaction is to think about the families of those people, the tragedy, the magnitude of it. However, I firmly believe that we should rebuild.
Just in the last few seconds, another building, building number 7, one of the buildings in support of the World Trade Center towers, has collapsed.
World Trade 7, functioning as the command center for the complex, housed giant diesel backup and oxygen systems, the mayor's protected emergency bunker, and offices for the CIA, Secret Service, Department of Defense, and Securities and Exchange Commission. Its other tenants were insurance companies, brokerages, and banks. No plane hit Building 7, but at 5:20 p.m. on September 11th, it collapsed in a heap on the ground. Some damage to Building 7 is said to have been caused by debris from Tower 1. Though this New York Times article tells us Building 7 burned like a giant torch, the only visuals that exist are of unidentified smoke and a few small fires. Compare this to the wallops sustained by World Trade Center 3, 4, 5, and 6. Positioned right below the towers, damage to the surrounding World Trade Center buildings was infinitely worse. Still, the structures held up. But somehow, rescue workers knew that Building 7 would fall.
You hear that?
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down soon.
A 47-story skyscraper, Building 7 folded neatly in 6.5 seconds, a textbook descent right into its footprint. Silverstein Properties now tells us that its owner was referring to the team of firefighters inside the building when he spoke of the decision to pulling the firemen out of harm's way. However, there were no firefighters in Building 7, according to FEMA, NIST, and Fire Chief Frank Fellini. They were ordered out at 11:30 that morning. 6 hours later, the building came down.
You know, we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and you know, it was horrifying. About a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that.
Radio host Alex Jones notes the mark of a classic implosion.
This is a photo taken 1 second into Building 7's collapse. Notice the crimp. If we look at other controlled demolitions, we see that they first blow one of the central columns so the building falls in on itself. If you don't do this, the building falls outward and can damage surrounding structures. Building 7 had a classic crimp or wedge. Its central column was blown out first, so it didn't structurally damage buildings just a few feet away from it.
Remember the mayor's emergency bunker? Ensconced on the 23rd floor of Building 7, it was retrofitted with superglass, water, oxygen, and its own generator. But Mayor Giuliani chose to find emergency shelter elsewhere on September 11th. Why Building 7? Even the media and its experts were confused. The History Channel interviews structural engineer Ramon Gilsans, who points out the obvious crimp and even speaks of the implosion.
Engineers are not just focusing on the Twin Towers. The most disturbing structural event was not that the Twin Towers fell, but that Tower 7, ignited by flying debris, fell due to fire alone.
Building 7 was a steel frame building, and is the first steel frame building that has collapsed due to fire. The failure of the building was an implosion. So it failed completely different than Towers 1 and 2, in which the floors failed first.
Why Building 7? Let's ask the question again. As the WTC Command Center, was it the hub for the 9/11 plan? Also, in 6.5 seconds, lost forever were thousands of SEC case files on corporate fraud, including those relating to the notorious activities of giants WorldCom and Enron. A few indictments for stock fraud, but what of the $70 billion California electricity swindle? It disappeared.
A good lecturer or person that I could steer our general audience to, if you want to have some of this information sourced, would be Richard Gage and the Architects for 9/11 Truth.
He's an architect experienced in steel structures. Now Richard Gage is touring the country with a controversial message about September 11th.
Richard Gage is here to show us why he's calling for a more thorough investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Well, first of all, give us a little bit more about your background.
Well, I'm an architect of 20 years, a member of the American Institute of Architects, and have been studying steel-framed, fireproof buildings for about that long.
We ask that for clarification because as we get into this, we want people to make sure that you're not just somebody with a wacky idea.
Right.
Okay? You come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings, and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever. And what we have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition. In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
Is it, what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, it's called Building 7, right? A football field away from the Twin Towers.
Okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and so this is a direct comparison. And you can see that, indeed, almost free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel. That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center. That is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark, for our country, because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily 3 of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
Now, if that was a controlled demolition, would there not be any evidence at the ground level of explosives within the building itself, that's the debris that's left?
Indeed, and what we find down there is pools of molten iron.
What does that mean?
Several tons. Exactly. What is that doing there? The first responders see it, the structural engineers see it. It's documented by FEMA, the melting of steel. Normal office fires is what's supposed to have brought these buildings down, along with jet plane impacts. But jet fuel and office fires don't produce molten iron or molten steel. It doesn't begin to melt until 3,000 degrees. But what we have is the fires only produce maybe 1,600 degrees. So what produced all that molten iron? Well, it has in it the chemical evidence of a special incendiary, which is thermite, a high-tech incendiary used to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. Indeed, in all of the dust throughout lower Manhattan, we have a 4 to 6 inch thick layer of this dust, and throughout it we have evidence of tiny spheres, billions of them, several tons of previously molten iron. Well, how does that happen? If you have molten iron, the byproduct of thermite is molten iron, and it's dispersed throughout all of this dust.
Now, you were allowed to go in and get samples and examine it?
Oh, there's plenty of dust. A lot of people have this dust, and 4 of these samples have been sent to physicist Stephen Jones, formerly of Brigham Young University. And they find in it not only these spheres, which others have found too, USGS, R.J. Lee, doing toxicological studies. These spheres have iron, aluminum, fluorine, manganese, very unusual elements associated only with thermite. And there's small chips of unignited thermite as well. This is very high-tech thermite, nanothermite. It's not found in a cave in Afghanistan. It's produced in very sophisticated Defense Department contracting laboratories.
Okay, well, we have an enemy here. That the finger has been pointed to, that this was the work of Al-Qaeda. This was the work of Osama bin Laden, at least to get the planes all going into the buildings and into the field in Pennsylvania and into the Pentagon. Is there no way that they then could still be the enemy that placed those in the buildings first and then did the incendiary device via a plane second?
Right. Well, what you have to ask is who had access to the buildings? Did Al-Qaeda have access to these highly secure buildings? Probably not. Did they have access to sophisticated nanothermite, where the particles are 1,000 times smaller than a human hair? Probably not. Somebody else has to be investigated, and that's why we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a real investigation. We don't have the whole theory as to how this happened, who did it, why. We just lay out the facts like we did last night in the Veterans Memorial Auditorium, and we demand a real investigation, and they'll find out who, why, how, etc.
Okay. Then let me ask you, I'm person X. I want to place something in one of those buildings. Where would I carry it? How big would it be? Is it that visible that I would be spotted by security, or could I place it in one of my tooth fillings?
Yeah, we're talking about several tons of nanothermite and ordinary thermite. One would have to have access through security. So the security company involved for the World Trade Center should be thoroughly investigated. And it turns out to be Securicom, Stratosec. Somebody should look and see who's on the board of those companies. Some very interesting individuals turn out to be. In addition, one would have to have the cover of, say, an elevator modernization, which was, in fact, going on 9 months prior to 9/11, so that there were workers throughout the World Trade Center that had access to the hoistway, which is immediately adjacent to the core columns and beams in the building.
You're not trying to freak out the country, but you can't help but feel a little freaked out by this.
Yeah, you're getting it.
Yeah. And, of course, this is something we want to talk with you about a whole lot more, and we're out of time. But we do have a great deal of information on our website, knph.com. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're so welcome.
Thank you for
opening up a lot to think about. We'll be right back.
1,000 plus architects and engineers who are petitioning for a new investigation based off the video evidence, the eyewitness testimony, and the actual physical direct evidence of things like thermate that were found there. There's just a lot of peculiar things about 9/11 the biggest thing, and this is the thing I try to bring up to most people's World Trade Center 7. It's the building that's often like forgotten from the conversation when you bring up 9/11. And like I said before, it's the most suspicious collapse of all the collapses that happened on 9/11.
In 2007, our group took a trip out to New York to show support and help in fundraising for 9/11 first responders. And we actually were over by the new Building 7 that they were quick to reconstruct. And about 7 or 8 police officers actually came and surrounded us and threatened us with arrest for simply filming the new building and other buildings around, not just Building 7, just simply tourists filming. Threatened with arrest, surrounded by several cops. We were told that, you know, quote, "What do you think? You can just go around filming buildings?" That's what the New York police officers were telling us.
This actually happened to me. I was videotaping World Trade Center 7. I was across the street from it. And there's actually a YouTube video on this. I encourage you to check it out. It's on Ep01. But basically, I was filming across the street from World Trade Center 7, filming the building. I see in front of me, I look down, I see one police officer walk, and they have to come across this barricade. So I see one police officer, I see another, I see another, I see another, I see another. And they come all around at me. The first person that comes up to me is a young Latina officer, and she tells me this area is limited. And I told her this area is limited for freedom. I didn't really understand what kind of problem she had with me filming the building. I wasn't on their property. I was across the street from it. I was on, actually, it was a park. I think it's a little park right next to World Trade Center 7. I was basically on the edge of the park, which is, you know, public property. But yeah, they really didn't want me filming, and a few other police officers came up, and they wanted to see my ID. I told them I absolutely refused.
What was that direct quote she gave you, though, Terrence? That you had what? No freedom?
Yeah, she's like, I think what she, I said that this area is limited for freedom, and she goes, and I think you said something like no freedom. She goes, no freedom, or something like that. It's funny some of the reactions we get from people that, whether they're in law enforcement or politicians, because their idea, like, we have a constitution protecting our rights. Basically, you know, if you look at the Constitution, all the Constitution says is like, here, you're born, and you have these rights, and they can never be taken from you. But if you talk to a politician, they consider it being flexible.
It's privilege.
Yeah, it's privilege. It's privilege that I have, you know, my, you know, quote unquote God-given rights. But yeah, it's, you know, we've gotten reactions like that before from, you know, we you know.
A lot of positive reactions though here locally.
Yeah, the apparatus of the police state, it seems, has gotten people to kind of change their thinking on what the Constitution means. And, you know, so much in fact that a lot of people I talk to, like, you know, or some people I talk to in law enforcement, or like I said, more and more politicians, they're for the most part control freaks. That's what I've realized over the years interviewing them. But yeah, they feel that the Constitution's flexible and that your rights are flexible. So I guess, you know, me filming the World Trade Center 7 could be considered some kind of crazy terrorist plot or something, you know, but I honestly feel that I have those rights, and whether or not they want me to film there or not, I was going to continue to film.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Sheriff John Brown come for you? Tell me what you wanna do. What you gonna do? Yeah. Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Can I see your ID, please?
For what? What am I doing?
This is only area. It's limited.
Limited for what? Freedom?
No freedom.
No freedom?
It's for the people for the event. That's the reason we.
Yeah, if you want to film the video, if you want to film the stage, it's fine. They don't want you to film several times.
They don't want us to film it?
No, they don't. And it's private property.
You can't video buildings.
Do the math. Do the math. Think
It's
about
an
it.
investigation, though. I mean, they haven't properly investigated.
Think about it.
Like I said, you knew the building came down.
Yeah, but think about it. Why can't you?
Why can he hide behind this huge building and shoot people off anytime they come near us?
What are you talking about?
We have friends that have been here and are trying to get answers from the 9/11, and they've been shoot off. They've been accused of having bombs.
See, Larry don't want to hear that. I know Larry, but who's Larry? Larry's not above the law. We're citizens. We're Americans.
And you can't record this. You gotta shut that off. You can't be recording this. Shut that off.
It's a public sidewalk, though.
Can I ask you why you're taking my picture? When Ricky comes, I think he's got a bomb in his bag.
Exactly.
I saw wires coming out of there. I think he's got a bomb in his bag. Terrorist act? I guess they go away for about
We're not terrorists. We're Americans, sir.
I think he's got a bomb in his bag. Terrorist act? I guess they go away for about
We're not
30
terrorists.
days.
We're Americans, sir. We're citizens.
Well, you're right. By the time the government figures it out, you'll be in a hole for 30 days.
All they've been doing is trying to bring this issue up that this building fell on 9/11 and they'll be able to report it as a 9/11 commission report. They fell 6.5
You got terrorists that come here and do video.
Who sponsored the terrorists? Well, that's where we really got to get to this.
Exactly, but the thing is that, you know, the truth of the matter is that this is how they scout out their places. They video, you know what I mean?
How did they get the explosives in there, and then why did Larry Silverstein say that they decided to pull it and it came down? It's a criminal. That building over there got hit by more, basically, and it didn't fall, and all those buildings under the Trade Center didn't fall, and this one conveniently fell. I just think it's definitely looking into a new investigation.
Well, we're not even in the building. We're across the street.
Press. We are C.H.A.N.G.E.
These are the same guys that come out here every Saturday and demonstrate.
We are C.H.A.N.G.E, Minnesota.
Press and... Let me see. This is his ID, right? Can I see yours?
That's a press pass. That's not even ID. You guys make some driver's license? That's ID, but I still don't understand why I have to give my ID. So when we ask you for your ID, we require the car only.
Well, isn't that kind of like, I mean, Nazi Germany with the papers,
No, that's fine.
papers, please.
So you also, you're from
It's
New
current.
York?
I'm from Minnesota.
We're
I'm
from
out here
Minnesota.
for business and for tourist stuff. That's why people come to New York. And I mean, I see people over there taking pictures of this building, and nobody's flagging them down and calling them suspicious or anything.
You basically want me to show you my papers and I have done nothing wrong.
Just a hypothetical. Could we stand over on the far corner over there and tape the building, or is that's
We're
not
just taping the
acceptable?
buildings not allowed at all.
Well, we just can't, any building, anywhere, we can't tape. I can't go out in front of my own
In New York
house.
City, there's anything that's deemed a sensitive location, you can't tape it. I mean, you're not allowed to tape. You know, if you wanted to walk down First Avenue by the 42nd Street up by the United Nations, you're not allowed to tape the United Nations. You're not allowed to tape, like, basically, you're not allowed to film, like, you walk by the Israeli embassy, you're not allowed to film that. The Mossad agents will stop you from filming that. I mean, there's going to be, you're not allowed to film anywhere in the transit.
Aren't you guys afraid of, I mean, where we're at in our point of time in civilization?
Dude, look,
in the world?
this is not a point where I
You have
agree
to
or
live
not
in
agree.
this
I don't
city,
care.
though. You don't care?
What's that?
That's why we wouldn't come all the way out here if we didn't care. That's the main thing. You guys don't care about it. I mean, where the hell are we going to be? I mean, that's not going to do
So
anything.
you all belong to the same place?
Yeah, we are C.H.A.N.G.E, Minnesota.
That's what, newspaper?
It's on the internet. Infowars.com.
Check out wearechange.org.
For the future, right? We come to New York City. And a cop asking for ID, don't get a cop a hard time. Just get a cop the ID, okay? You can't no. Listen. You can't come to New York City. They ain't gonna try to treat us like that, understand? I'm not. No. Let me speak. They ask you for ID several times, and you don't want to show no ID. It's not the way it works here, okay? We ask you questions for a reason. It's not because we are picking and choosing. We want to ask you whatever questions we want to ask you. That's what I'm saying. So be a little more cooperative when you come to our city. And you know, PD's asking you for ID, identify yourself. Because we don't know who you are. I'm not just gonna take your word and just say, okay, you come from here, you come from there, and I'm gonna believe you. Walk away like I'm an idiot. So you gotta be a little more cooperative and get your ID. But we're not gonna mistreat you. We're not gonna treat you wrong. Understand? Yeah. Courtesy goes two ways. Understand me? Yeah. That's what we're asking for, right? So be a little more cooperative at times. Don't try to give people a hard time and question, answer a question with a question. Okay? You can't do that with cops. You know what I mean? You gotta be a little more cooperative, guy. All right? Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Definitely check that out, man.
What you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Chevy John Brown come for you?
The World Trade Center 7 collapse changed a lot. Changed me a lot in the way I think of what government is and what it's doing and how it's supposed to work. You realize that there's more lies than truth.
Another good source that I recently heard on the radio regarding this subject, 9/11 in general, but also the buildings and Building 7 in particular, was Linda Moulton Howe is an independent investigative journalist that went on Coast to Coast AM radio, which is a worldwide radio show in the middle of the night. And anyway, she went on to the show to go ahead and reveal that through independent studies, 3 independent universities were sent blind samples of the World Trade Center debris, and they weren't told what the debris was. They just wanted to know what it was and how it came to be, presented to her before they had 3 individual universities tested. They all came back with definitive reports that there was trace amounts to heavy amounts of thermite.
Yeah, it's someone like, I don't know if our general viewing audience is going to be familiar with the term hit pieces. There's been a multitude of what they call hit pieces that presented as factual evidence of the things that happened on 9/11. One of them, like I mentioned earlier in the show, was a PBS documentary that featured...
America Rebuilds.
Yeah, it's called America Rebuilds. Yep. And it basically, they use a 3D model simulation to describe how World Trade Center 7 collapsed. The only problem with that is like, as it collapses, the 4 core columns are still there. It's in the presentation that they show you. You can still see the 4 main columns standing of the building. Yet, if you're, seeing that model and have a viewing of what you saw on TV, it's 2 different things. Even if you believe that the model worked, why are the 4 core columns still standing there? And the thing about it is, you realize if they're doing any kind of 3D modeling and they're trying to make it realistic or whatever, the program is going to be skewed. They can skew the program to a point, but they can't skew it completely to make an impossible collapse happen. And even in the program, they can't get rid of the 4 main columns. And I've seen a number of documentaries on 9/11, and one of the things about hit pieces is they'll have a bunch of half-truths or half-evidence, and they won't present you your whole story. I mean, put it to you this way: Hearst Publishing, the founding father of the term yellow journalism, has done 2+ documentaries about 9/11, and they're the most untrusting news organization ever conceived.
Popular Mechanics at one point probably did have some integrity, and just like he mentioned, when they got bought out by Hearst Publishing, that was pretty much it for them. They obviously could have done some real journalism, but they chose not to.
Yeah. One thing people kind of get hung up on is about the things like, this is the thing. I know enough about 9/11 to know that it did happen the way it was told, and also know enough to know that the people you can see obviously who the people benefited. You can see who had the means, but we don't. Unless there's another investigation on 9/11, we will never know the full picture of it. So rather than going off and saying Israel did it, or this country did it, or these people did it, or this and that, I go and say, this is what I can prove. Are there people who hail from the nation of Israel that could have been involved? Yeah, I'd say that's pretty likely. But I'm going to say Israel as a country has something to do with it, or as a government. I can't really say that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't really say that. So there's a bunch of documentaries out there, and some are better than others. And like you said, there's some documentaries that are just straight up anti-Israel.
Yeah.
And mixing in 9/11, and that's not what we're about. We basically just want the truth, and wherever it may lead us, that's one thing. And I'm of the mind to say that typically the people in most countries are just fine. It's just the governments that are the problem.
Exactly.
You know?
Especially when they're unchecked and there's
no checks and balances.
Yeah.
I just like to say that core corruption is it's a new video that's out that really explains a lot about
Colorado Change. Yes,
a lot of they're excellent. It's probably one of the better movies I've seen as far as the intelligence and military, their involvement in all this, and the connections, the real connections between all these people. And the Democrats are involved in it just as much as the Republicans because they're using this. And while Joe Biden, our vice president, met with the head of Pakistani intelligence a couple days before 9/11, and after his meeting with Joe Biden, he instructed one of his minions to wire Mohammed Atta, the supposed mastermind of 9/11, was it $10,000?
$100,000.
$100,000. So what was Joe Biden meeting with the head of Pakistani intelligence right before 9/11?
Yeah.
Also, he said he had to meet with them just like they had to meet with Khrushchev. They didn't arrest Khrushchev.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If you look at the 9/11 Commission report, it's a massive document, and I've taken a bite out of it. You try it yourself and see how far you get through it. But it doesn't what typically in a crime, and like a crime of that proportion, what you need is money to get it off. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what you need. And the 9/11 Commission report completely dismisses the funding of the attack. They completely dismiss it, don't really address it. But I guess that's better than going and saying that Joe Biden had met with so and so, and that $100,000 was wired to one of the hijackers. You know, like I think that's a lot. It's a lot easier to say that that's not important versus saying that this politician's in cahoots with terrorists.
Well, think
because
about
that's what.
I'm sorry. It kind of brings it home back to family and first responders and stuff, where it was the family and the first responders really pushing for that 9/11 Commission. And
yes,
even when
exactly.
you're just like with funding and stuff, and we got to remember that when Bill Clinton went through his indiscretions with Monica Lewinsky, I can't tell you the exact figure, but it was astronomically larger than the original budget they gave for the original 9/11 Commission. It just kind of shows.
I think it was $50,000 or $40,000 or something they spent on.
I'm not sure if it's that low, but
No,
it was a ridiculous amount.
Yeah, that you touch up on another good point. The original. The only reason the commission would ever existed because the family members had to fight to get this the commission created. The government did not. The Bush administration in particular did not want this investigated. They wanted to blame these terrorists, these quote unquote terrorists, and they wanted to like dump all the remaining debris in China, which they ended up doing anyway. But before that, while around that was happening, they did get the 9/11 Commission, but the only reason they exist is because, the Jersey Girls, the wives and widows.
And who did they pick first that was going to head the 9/11 Commission?
Henry Kissinger.
Kissinger of all people.
Yep. And that's the thing. Like if you look at 9/11 for any longer than like a few minutes, just look sifting through the data information what happened that day. You're gonna first thing you're gonna realize is like, well, I was lied to about a bunch of stuff, and the other thing was, if I was lied to about this, then what the hell really happened? And like seeking those answers could take you years or whatever. I mean, I'm no demolitions expert. I can tell you what I've read. I can show you the information that I read, and I could I could show you equations of how a building collapsing that fast is just impossible and improbable if not impossible. But there's so much data, there's so many documentaries, but that's the one thing you get immediately is that you were lied to about 9/11 and that the official story is a lie. Well, if that's a lie, I have to it forces you to rethink your way of the way that your world works, and it's for some people I'm not even say for some people. For most people, that's scary as hell. And I know it was for me. I realize I had a decision right now. I can sit on my butt and know this information, or I can get out and try to share it with other people. And not to say that, We Are Change is gonna completely revolutionize media and that. I don't know, but you know, we're out here trying. Yeah. They changed their definition of pandemic. They literally changed the definition of pandemic to raise it to level 5. If that's not fear mongering, I don't know what the hell is.
5 of 6.
5 of 6.
And 6 is martial law.
Yeah, and I mean, to source that, I mean, the people on Fox, I mean, you can look that up on the internet. Just type in martial law swine flu, and you got people on Fox and CNN both talking.
Another thing is I found a link to that, in the end of February, the Baxter Pharmaceutical, subsidiary of Bayer, who was one of a big Nazi company, they sent out, was it like 18 batches of vaccine to like 14 different countries, European countries.
Vaccine, yeah.
Yeah, and this, in Czechoslovakia, they took it and fed it or gave it to some ferrets to test it. Well, all the ferrets died. So they did some tests on this to see what was going on. It had 2 different types of live bird flu virus, not vaccine, but live bird flu virus mixed with a highly virulent form of human flu, so that they could get these 2 to combine and then make the swine flu or the avian flu airborne, so that it could be transferable to humans. But you don't hear nothing about this on a regular news. As a matter of fact, the news source that did first report it, World Health Organization, gave the contract for this new vaccine to Baxter Pharmaceutical. So what's really going on here? What's really going on?
There's a lot of mixed reports going on about it too. I mean, during the daytime television news or talk radio, I tune in to mainstream sources just to hear what they're talking about sometimes. And during the day, literally, you got people saying, "Oh, the swine flu might have been a little bit smaller than we thought it was." And then at night, you turn on your radio at the top of the hour, midnight, 1 o'clock, AM 1500, KSTP, a local station right here in Minnesota, and top of the hour news, you hear that it's breaking out everywhere, that there's so many cases of this new swine flu detected within Americans that the CDC has stopped counting how many people are infected. And then you wake up the next morning, literally, and you hear them say, well, we think we just overblown this, so I think, it might have been just, us jumping to conclusions here. But I mean, night and day difference.
And it's like you say, I mean, you're not straying away from our original topic. I mean, it really comes down to people in positions of power, authority. Here, fear this. Here's another thing to fear. And what can we accomplish by making you fear?
Yeah.
Or what can we get legislation or whatever passed? Maybe not so much with this, but definitely with 9/11.
It seems like one thing that happens with all these things, I mean, it would have happened with swine flu I don't think if we had so many mainstream sources of media, I mean, we didn't have so many alternative sources of media, we would have been, who knows, everybody went locked inside their house right now with duct tape and plastic, trying to, keep themselves from getting on a train or, whatever, simply because of the flu. And like I was saying before, a regular flu kills like 30,000 people a year in the U.S. And this thing killed barely 3 people. At the height of it, they didn't. At the height of it, there weren't that many people that had suffered. But the tactics of fear are always there. If they could have used that for something, they would have. That's the one thing we can get from this whole swine flu thing.
World Health Organization has announced that they want to have a mandatory vaccination of everybody in the United States, and if you don't take the vaccination, you will get forcibly vaccinated.
That should be putting bells off in everybody's heads, that if they're trying to get everybody to do something, that's probably not.
And now to a report in this morning's Washington Post that the Obama administration is considering implementing a new fall vaccination program against the flu, a plan that would require Americans to get not 1, not 2, but 3 flu shots. Dr. Nancy Snyderman is NBC's chief medical editor. Nancy, good morning.
Hi,
to you.
Meredith.
Unprecedented this is. How would this work?
Well, here's the idea. On the first Saturday when we knew swine flu was an issue, the Centers for Disease Control held a conference, and we were already talking, with those of us who listened in, about how you're going to ramp up manufacturing this new vaccine on top of the old vaccine.
Because it takes a lot of time. It takes about 5 months or
And
so.
the decision was made, if we're going to get the normal flu vaccine to the general public in the fall, to hold it up while we figure out the swine flu was perhaps going to put the entire population at risk. So at that moment, the decision was made, we would go into normal flu production for the normal vaccine, like it is.
For seasonal flu.
Right, for seasonal flu. Figure out what the swine flu really is, and then perhaps tag team a second vaccine on top of it.
Okay, so that's why they didn't combine them into one shot, but why 2 additional shots for swine flu?
For the normal seasonal flu that you and I talk about every year, there's a herd immunity to some extent, so you only need 1 shot. The new strain we've never seen before, so that requires sort of thinking like when we give our babies or their first shot. You get your shot, it boosts up your immune system, and then you need a booster. So for the new H1N1 swine flu, for which there's no known immunity in our population, that requires 2 shots.
I would think, because it's hard to get people to take the original.
As we
flu
know,
shot,
don't we, since you don't get your flu shot in the
No,
fall.
I don't. Okay, fine.
Okay.
I might this year, though.
Good.
But now you're asking people to get 3. That's a tough sell.
Well, Meredith, I think you've hit the nail on the head. This is going to be a public relations, trust your government and your health officials public campaign. Mark my word, you and I are going to be talking about this a lot between now and fall. So I think what the government is likely going to do is urge people to early on get their normal flu shot and then trust the scientists to say the swine flu is for real, get these other 2. Now, we've yet to hear the clear, concise direction from the government, so I don't think we should jump on the bandwagon before we hear what the recommendation is. But if they do believe that this swine flu could be a real uptick in severity, you're going to see a massive public education campaign.
But we trusted the scientists back in 1976 with the original swine flu shot, and a lot of people
it was a
got
debacle.
sick. Right.
Not only that, some people died, some people were
From the
paralyzed.
shot itself.
And
Yeah.
people remember the swine flu vaccine as a terrible disaster.
Most of it is just lying by omission. Like you said, you'll get a story about like 9/11 or something, but they won't mention key points of what happened or what they suspect happened. They will tell you the truth to a certain point, and then either you'll be forced to like look for some other source of information to get the rest of those facts if you're smart enough to like do that, or you're just left to like left to what that last source told you. And that's the thing, like. When I look up articles, when I research, especially when I started researching 9/11, there's so much information that you can look at the mainstream, you look at an alternative, you can sift if you want to. You can sift and find, what they call the trinkets of truth or whatever that, that are in there. Because I've read 9/11 stuff that's like just been extreme over the top. I've read stuff about no planes and stuff like. I'm willing to at least read it and see if it has anything to add to the debate or the conversation about what really happened. And if more Americans or more people in general were willing to do that, we probably wouldn't be in such a bad position right now. And I think the really good thing is, the fact that we have a show, and the fact that we have websites, the fact that there's organizations that we're connected to, they're all willing to go out, ask the tough questions, have scientists, architects, pretty much, all walks of life and working Americans are willing to do the job that other people should be doing.
Their elected officials should be doing.
Yeah,
exactly what I was going to say. I mean, if our journalists would do the jobs that they were supposed to do, and
but look
a lot
at
of us
some
wouldn't have to be here.
Correct me if
We're
I'm
here by
wrong,
necessity.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but was the media not established to kind of be?
It's the 4th branch of the government.
Yeah.
But
now
they were put together to kind of be.
It's a watchdog.
The watchdog.
That's exactly what it is.
And they've gone from that to just being lapdogs.
GE owning NBC. They're not going to give you anything. They're not going to really tell you anything critical of the war because they're making money off of GE side.
Yeah, GE sells weapons and they sell news. So.
And it comes down to it's stockholders, shares.
It's one of our
stuff
constitutional
like that,
rights, to have freedom of press, but it's not very constitutional to go ahead and be removed from a McCain, get together and just for trying to ask a question. We didn't even get to the point of raising the hand or getting verbal and asking a question of McCain, and Anthony arrested, detained by the Secret Service, and told we're on the list. And
hey, Agent Valentine.
How you doing?
Just want to say hi. And,
This one's for you.
Yeah, you guys might not be familiar with what they're talking about. Is there a video for that?
Yeah, there's a video.
There's a YouTube video. These guys went to a McCain event. Jamie and Anthony did. They went to a McCain event. It was right before his election, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right before the election.
Yes, July.
It was out in Wisconsin, I believe. Yeah, they went to a McCain event. At the point, he's being handled by Secret Service because he's not anymore. But at the time, they give the presidential nominees protection via Secret Service, and they were both detained by Secret Service. Anthony was just trying to figure out. You were trying to just ask questions. You were trying to get to somebody to see if you can ask a question.
We were asking why he took a picture, and I guess maybe scared his aide, handler, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah.
And it was because there was all the major media was there, and me and Jamie watched every one of them walk behind this curtain, behind the little rope there, and everyone got to go in there and ask their softball questions. But when it came down to addressing an actual picture, hey, this is what we have, this is what we want to talk to them.
I think the second I raised my hand was the second that I got tapped on the shoulder. I mean, almost within 3 seconds. I was raising my hand to get his attention to ask a question. I mean, to me, and I would say that everyone up on this panel, it would be a very important question, about possibly why he's posing with 9/11 victims' family members and pictures.
People that were directly involved
when he was here.
And lost family members on that day.
Yeah.
It's like it's some joke to him.
Yeah. And I mean, we were just going to ask him if maybe he supported that ideology. I mean, I know that's kind of lunacy to think that, but I mean, we were possibly, I would go on to ask him if he supported that, if he wanted to address that sometime,
He still has not addressed that issue to this day.
We can address the New York guys that just got arrested for trying to ask Bloomberg questions about why he's not, why they're dropping the first responders off of their health insurance. And
once again, this gets back to the first responders. Luke Rudkowski is always hounding Mayor Bloomberg about the first responders. There were various points in which bills were passed to give them support and aid, yet the state, not the state, but more, I guess to say more or less, Bloomberg had direct, he had direct action of what would happen to those funds. And rather than support the victims' families, he chose to reallocate those funds or just downright lose them in some. He chose to reallocate those funds and also just completely drop them. There was multiple points where there's multiple videos of Luke Rudkowski confronting him over that issue. There's points where you can see that Luke's actions had direct consequence on the funds staying in play. But what happened a few weeks ago, Luke came up to an event. Okay, we got 5 minutes left, but Luke came up to try to approach Mayor Bloomberg at a hotel, I believe it was, and before he even made it up there, he was detained and arrested for trespassing, I believe. Even though it was at a hotel, he didn't have a room there, but at the same time, he wasn't really asked to leave, and the people that detained him and arrested him didn't work for the hotel at all. So right now, he has a court date coming up, and he's trying to raise funds. But he was essentially arrested because he was going to ask Bloomberg a question and may influence him to change his mind about what he did. I found that, and that to me is the definition of what a journalist should be doing. I mean, I'm not going to say for 100% that Luke confronting Mayor Bloomberg multiple times helped. But if you see the videos, if you see what happened before and you see the action that happened afterwards, it had a direct correlation of Luke confronting him. And that's why we do this. I don't expect direct action to anything I do.
Mayor Bloomberg, didn't he just, he spent about 43, some enormous amount of money, $43 million, in lawyer fees fighting the first responders.
Yes.
For the first responders wanting help.
Yeah.
Instead of them just giving them the funds for the help that they need. Mayor Bloomberg decided to spend the funds in fighting the first responders in court cases.
He essentially, yeah, you're right. He essentially spent the money that they would have gotten in court fees defending himself against them. It's so preposterous, and like I know people are listening, like that can't be true. Look it up.
Yeah.
I honestly, it's you know, one thing I realized over the years. I'm 26 years old. The older I get, the more I realize how strange reality is. It's a lot weirder than you think.
Stranger than fiction.
Hell yeah, it is. But yeah, the first responders are basically they get avoided. They get it's funny, like if you look at Giuliani's presidential campaign, he rode on the backs of first responders.
Sure did.
And they can't lift a finger though to like save them. And but if you at all privy to what happened on 9/11, you know, either you're somebody who's in office who has everything to lose by, you know, addressing 9/11, or your first responder dying now. You know,
possible national security gap.
Yeah, you're at a certain point, you're actually a national security risk. Mm-hmm. You know, so why if you look at it from that point of view, you quickly realize why they don't want to help the first responders. It has everything to do with cover. It's like at the end, they're the last piece of the cover up of 9/11. You know.
And not all journalism is deceptive. I mean, even some of the stuff that we may consider some of the mainstream stuff that's deceptive. I think it was like, what was that, Tom Brokaw that did the special coverage about the drills that were actually run on 9/11. I mean, think about that, people, for a moment. Drills of simulated hijackings going on, and our military's tied up over the Atlantic, tied up over different spots of the U.S. Our response time was low, or excuse me, very, you know, was it prolonged from responding, and they actually went ahead and, I mean, they talked about this, you know, that NORAD actually had drills that day of a simulated hijacking, and the targets were the World Trade Centers. That is on, Google it. Tom Brokaw, isn't it? Tom Brokaw and 9/11 and planes and towers.
Drills.
Tom Brokaw drills.
Operation Able Danger.
Yeah, truth really is stranger than fiction. It really is.
I say to this, people, if you're at all interested in looking this up, you should be if you're an American citizen, because if 9/11 doesn't affect you directly by the events that happen, you know, you don't have family members, you don't know anybody who died in towers. Well, the after effect, the multiple wars, the loss of rights, the multiple Patriot Acts, Democrats, Republicans, they've all pushed this stuff. I mean, they act like they're different, but they voted for this. It wasn't one or the other. I mean, it's both sides. And if you start just scratching the surface of 9/11, you'll just fall down a rabbit hole. It gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And like I keep on saying it, but reality is so much stranger than fiction. And I guess we'll close out with that. And yeah, thanks you guys for watching. We're gonna have a show on once a week, every week. We're gonna try to play.
Another song to signify what's wrong. Another song today that tells me I must move on. Another cigarette will do enough to fill spaces between thoughts of you. I jump up and down for your attention. Rhyme after rhyme with you is my intention. Supplies with eggs I burn for you, but you don't notice, do you? Do you? Silence is violence. You don't notice, do you? I'm trying to break through your silence. Silence is violence. You don't notice, do you? I'm fighting to lose until you're silent. By the time I reach, but your hand's not out. Holes in the wall that we don't talk about. Neither is it me, baby.
Hey everybody, it's me, Robert Wannick, and I just want to convey a quick positive message that there's genocide happening, children are being killed, there's unconstitutional wars. Our own Americans are getting no shot at a future because of corporate greed. So we need to look to politicians, we need to look at them right in the eyes, we need to say, we're not going to tolerate you killing Americans. We're not going to tolerate you going to war over needless personal interests. You turn on TV, there's soldiers dying every day because we went to war over lies. It's all a corporatocracy. We don't care about the people. We care about money. We care about how much money we can make, and we don't care what's at stake. So, as the future's just getting darker and darker, we need people to rise up and not be scared, and not sit behind their sock puppet accounts. We need people to have a voice in the movement, because you can make a difference. Look at the news, and you'll figure out that not everything is okay. So use your voice. The New World Order is coming. America is becoming a fascist state. This is the way it is. The police are becoming ever aggressive. So now it's your turn to fight back. So use your head and use your voice. The #1 cause of death in the world is silence. Silence to let the tyrants oppress us, abuse us, and murder us, rape us of our rights, and take away our money and liberties. And we're not going to allow that anymore. So starting now, the silence ends. I want as many video responses to this as you can post. I know I've been on vacation for a while. I've made a few humorous videos. I've been scared at my reputation. I've been threatened and harassed. But it's time to get back to business and kick some tyrant ass. Obama has done nothing. The economy is still garbage. Toilet paper money is still in my pocket. So what are we going to do about it? Let's attend these End the Fed protests, just like we did at the Tax Day Tea Party protests. The conspiracies are no longer theory. We have Fox News and MSNBC swinging on our side. FEMA camps have hit mainstream, and the attempts at debunking them have been a massive failure. We have had suspected New World Order shills agree with the conspiracy people. We're reaching the majority, and now it's time to fight back. So don't shut up, don't back down, and do not give up your rights, because I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. Get the truth out there. Get the stickers. Pass them out, because we need to reach the public. Get your cameras, stick it in their face and say, you know what, officer? Freedom of the press still exists because this isn't a third world country. Yet, even though our tap water is starting to become that of a slum country. Hey Obama, before you think about invading a country illegally, like your puppet Bush did, ask us. Because this time, we're not going to wait for you to find the WMDs. And this time, you're not going to be in office. Because we're taking the power back. So declaring right now, power back to the people. One last message to all you rich, corporate scumbags that know the plot for one world government, that openly taunt us with your plans. You can sit behind your white Bentley. You can have your nice tux with nice tie, nice spoken words. But you're going to need to cut the black and white rhetoric. Because the black and white rhetoric is no longer going to be accepted by the American people. Because you know what's more important than copyrights? Human rights. You know what's more important than money? Freedom.